to start in time because those who have joined, at least they should be given the benefit.
Sure, sir. So, good evening, everyone. ICSI welcomes you to this interactive session wherein all of us have collected on a virtual platform to discuss on a recent discussion paper dated 24th of November 2020, floated by the IBPI on the subject voluntary liquidation by the corporate person. Now, to discuss on the paper and to steer the present discussion, we have Ashish Makhija sir with us. I am sure all of you know sir. I mean, as we have seen the interacting with sir, and but please allow me a moment to briefly introduce sir. Ashish sir is a commerce and a law graduate from Delhi University. He holds a master's degree in law from India as well as US. Sir is a fellow member of Chartered Accountant Institute and Chartered Management Institute. Sir practices law as an advocate in the constitutional courts in the country as well as the tribunals. Sir has a deep interest and knowledge in corporate and commercial laws, especially the bankruptcy law. Without further ado, I would straight away request sir to take the discussion forward. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction. I think the only introduction is I am a fellow insolvency professional, and I think I'd love to be a part of the fraternity. So that's very, very important. And I must thank ICSI, Triple IP, and you and the other people who are there for, you see, reposing faith in me that I can lead this discussion and steer this discussion. But friends, let me tell you one thing. The discussion has to happen. It is not a one-side thing which is going to be there. So what I will do is I will share my presentation, a short presentation on the discussion paper so that everyone is on the same page. And then whatever issues have been identified by IBBI on which the comments are to be given. So we will debate and discuss over that. And we have got a chat box. We can write on the chat box, and I think we can unmute people also and have the discussion. So let me start by you a very, very short presentation.
Just allow me a little interjection. Allow me a little interjection. I could also see Sahu sir, Dr. M.S. Sahu sir. So, okay. I mean, just wanted to inform that. So IBB officials are also going to be there, and I also saw Sahu sir there.
Okay. So we are extremely delighted to have Dr. M.S. Sahu here. I think that is one of our privileges out here, and in fact, his presence obviously makes a huge difference on this kind of a discussion also. So welcome, sir. And there are a lot of insolvency professionals also who are there, who are practicing in this area, and particularly they have a lot of wisdom. I believe they will be able to contribute on this. So friends, I'm just going to share a short presentation of the discussion paper, what has been stated by IBBI. So here, as far as voluntary liquidation is there, in fact, on this slide, it is mentioned as section 50, it is section 59. So just to have this small correction. So section 59 is there in our insolvency and bankruptcy code. And there were almost around 20 sections which were there in Companies Act 2013, which have been now replaced because that voluntary winding up is now become voluntary liquidation in IBC. All of us are aware about that. And chapter 5 and part 2 of the code, they include section 59. And then IBBI has also issued the voluntary liquidation process regulations 2017. And in fact, if we go on to the code as well as the liquidation process regulations, we don't see that adjudicating authority has any role to play at the time of initiation of the voluntary liquidation. Because the word voluntary liquidation itself says that it is voluntary on the part of the corporate debtor. And the first of the condition is that the corporate debtor should not have committed default. I think we are all aware about this kind of a thing. And the initiation is not done by the adjudicating authority, but the initiation is done by the corporate debtor itself by passing a special resolution. And of course, 2/3 of the creditors in value must also approve that resolution. But the role of adjudicating authority, which has also been identified in a discussion paper, is that once the affairs of the corporate person are completely wound up, and the assets are liquidated completely in a voluntary liquidation, then the liquidator is supposed to move an application for dissolving the company, because that is, dissolution is always the last step of liquidation. And in case in case the liquidator feels that fraud or the corporate person to defraud the creditors, well, he can again move to the adjudicating authority for suspension of the process. And there is a third application which also can be made, which is also mentioned as part of the regulations, that in case there are unclaimed proceeds of liquidation or there are undistributed assets, so if they have to be transferred to the public account of India, again the liquidator has to approach the adjudicating authority. So if we see that the role of the adjudicating authorities is very limited in the sense of handling voluntary liquidation. Now, the issue which is pertaining to which we need to discuss in the discussion paper also is that withdrawal of voluntary liquidation process. Now, there can be few situations which have been anticipated in the paper itself. The first is that the business opportunity can arise after the decision to voluntarily liquidate has been taken by the corporate person. Well, initially they thought that they don't need a company, they are solvent, but they want to dissolve the company. But they may, take a decision later on. They may, some opportunity may arise where the business can revive, or they can do some business in that particular company itself. So they can again go back, and whether they can withdraw the voluntary liquidation process or not, that is one of the questions. And second is the sale of the corporate person as a going concern for higher realization. So in liquidation process also, we have seen that IBBI has introduced the regulations where the sale of the corporate debtor as a going concern can be done, which obviously the intention is to save the company as far as possible. And of course, better realization is always there. So similar kind of a situation can also arise in a voluntary liquidation process. And these are factors, rather, I would say, behind the voluntary liquidation, they have been identified in the discussion paper. It's that corporate person is the driving force. Unlike the liquidation of the corp or the CIRP process, where an application has to be made, they have to be triggered under section 7, 9, and 10. And then, of course, under section 33, the liquidation process starts. But there it is done with the intervention of the adjudicating authority. So here the driving, force behind voluntary liquidation is the corporate person itself. And if we look at the regulations also, all the reports which are to be submitted by the liquidator, they are submitted to the corporate person, because adjudicating authority is nowhere in picture. And the decision are also taken by the corporate person with regard to manner and mode of liquidation and the sale of assets. In fact, if you look at the regulations, you will find that schedule number 1, which is there in liquidation regulation, is missing in voluntary liquidation. So this is the leverage which has been given to the corporate person in voluntary liquidation. So to say, liquidator also has got a limited role as compared to the liquidation process. So this has also been identified discussion paper itself. If we go by the withdrawal of the voluntary liquidation process, well, the history tells us that till 31st October, 8 cases have been withdrawn, suspended, or cancelled. And one of our learned friend who is also present in this discussion today, Mr. Madhusudan, and he was informing us that one of the case was his, where a special resolution was passed, and then the process was cancelled. So out of 8 cases, 5 cases where the process has been cancelled because the corporate person has itself passed a special resolution once again to withdraw from the process. And in one case, the liquidator approached for suspension as claims exceeded the asset. So in case the claims are exceeding, that means the company is not solvent, and the adjudicating authority has got powers to suspend that process of liquidation. And that was done in this particular case. And in 2 more cases, in one case, it is mentioned that it is for the revival of the business. And in another case, in fact, no reason has been mentioned, but voluntary liquidation has been allowed to be withdrawn. So we have not seen many cases, but yes, that possibility is also there, that withdrawal through cancellation, through suspension is also possible. Now, if we compare this with the previous Companies Act, where there was a section 466 in Companies Act 1956, and in Companies Act 2013, section 289 is still there, where it says that the tribunal, the power was with the tribunal. Act 1956, we will read tribunal as High Court, may at any time after making a winding up order on the application either of the official liquidator or any creditor or contributory, and on proof of satisfaction of the tribunal that all the proceedings in relation to winding up ought to be stayed, make an order staying the proceedings either together or for a limited time. So this was also one of the power which was there with the erstwhile, the High Court or the tribunal under the erstwhile provisions which were there in the Companies Act. But of course, if we compare it that whether they had got the powers to completely withdraw, well, that is what has been mentioned in two judgments. And this is an Allahabad High Court judgment of 2006. This is a very important thing, and I would like to read it for the benefit of the members. This power includes the power to stay the voluntary winding up itself together when the court is satisfied the causes for which the voluntary winding up resolution was passed, if any disclosed to the court, no longer exist. So this is one of the important aspects, that the causes for which the voluntary winding up resolution was passed, those causes do not exist. Second, the company is not indebted and commercially is solvent, and a bona fide effort has been made to revive the company. So these are the three aspects which Allahabad High Court also identified. And the court will, however, not act as a mere change of opinion of the members, contributories, and would like to be satisfied that with a change in the conditions in which such resolution is passed, the power should be exercised sparingly, and only where it is just, beneficial, and expedient to do so, taking into consideration the object of formation of the company, the resolution of the differences, if any, the availability of the assets in support of the resolution to continue with the business, and the stage at which such resolution has been passed. Namely, that the liquidator has not proceeded to sell the assets and to pay creditors and contributors. So this is extremely important, friends. The stage of the liquidation has been considered as one of the aspects which will be looked into by the High Court or the tribunals which are going to be exercising powers. And similarly, we have another Karnataka High Court judgment, which is very, very seminal in nature, which says if the shareholders have resolved to revive the company and make one more effort to start a cement factory, opportunities should not be denied to them. So this is also on the revival of the company. And in these circumstances, the application was granted. That means the company went back on its rails. So these are the two judgments which probably gives us an idea that under what circumstances the revival can happen or withdrawal of the liquidation process can be done. So let us come down to an analysis, which is also a part of discussion paper.
May I say something? I am Divyang Majmudar.
Sir, let me complete my presentation.
I would not interfere in talks, but there is one more judgment on the same aspect. Shan Jhaveri versus Gautam Sarabhai Private Limited of Gujarat High Court.
Okay, what does it say, sir?
This in fact was which I used to take care of. Though I was not representing as an advocate, I am a chartered accountant, but I used to carry the whole process. This is very interesting judgment. If I read the excerpts of it, it says that the company G's only source of income was immovable property, but the same was the subject matter of litigation with Cooperative Housing Society, to whom the property was given on lease for construction of flats. At an extraordinary general meeting held on 20th-1-1970, it was resolved by the shareholders of the company that the company be wound up voluntarily and liquidators be appointed for the purpose of such winding up. However, as a result of the order of the cooperative court, company was to realize a substantial amount, and on account of that, the changed circumstances, the company passed a special resolution at the meeting of the contributors held on 11/2/2009 to stay the voluntary winding up. The company filed an application for permanently staying the voluntary liquidation of the company, discharging the liquidators, reviving and restarting the company for other release. See, in this particular case, the court went into the aspects of something beyond the process also. Though they have a power to, they had a power under the Companies Act, but the court inquired whether the company was compliant with the provisions of all other laws or not. Say, for example, whether income tax returns were filed properly, whether the ROC returns were filed properly, what happened during the course of, because it was almost 25 years that the company remained in voluntary winding up. This is very unusual. So this was a landmark judgment of Gujarat High Court, and therefore I just wanted to share it with you.
Okay, sir, can you just give us a citation very quickly? Do you have the citation of the case?
Sorry, I can't
Okay.
hear.
We will proceed now. So the analysis is that number one, there is no express provision of withdrawal in voluntary liquidation in the code as well as in the regulations. And we have also seen that adjudicating authority has allowed closure in 8 cases of voluntary liquidation. And in fact, if we go back to liquidation process also, there is no express provision of withdrawal. But in 10 cases till 31st October 2020, there is a record that the liquidation has been closed for various reasons. And in one case it was done where I was handling the matter before the Supreme Court, and this matter is still going on. But the Honorable Supreme Court has said that we will prefer that the company should revive rather than the liquidation. So there could be various reasons could be there. And then the option for closure of voluntary liquidation should be provided. This is what the discussion paper is all about. Of course, it says it should be done with the approval of the adjudicating authority. So this is one of the important aspects which we are going to discuss. But friends, when we say that this needs to be closed, this can't be without any checks and balances, because this can't be allowed that anyone can come for voluntary liquidation anytime and can go back also. So there has to be certain checks and balances, as we have also noted in one of the judgments, that stage of voluntary liquidation is important. So now stage can be divided into 2 parts. That number one, liquidator has done nothing. That means he has not come out with a public announcement of sale, he has not sold it, and he has not settled or paid any claim. Or the second stage could be that there is a partial sale or some partial claim payments have been made. So these are the 2 situations which could be there, stages of the voluntary liquidation. And then what should be the authority to decide withdrawal? Well, obviously, because the voluntary liquidation gets started with by passing of the special resolution. So a special resolution, whether it should be required by the members or not, the answer is yes, that it should be done. So members again should resolve that the company should go back, should withdraw from the voluntary liquidation process. Similarly, since the creditors' approval was also required to that resolution, so creditors should also have a say even in withdrawal. That looks quite logical also. And the additional part of the checks and balances could be that there will be an approval of the adjudicating authority, which will be brought about it in this particular case. The proposed amendment is like this, friends, that the corporate person be allowed to seek approval of the adjudicating authority, special resolution of members, and in case no sale has taken place, then approval of 2/3 of the creditors in value, similar to what is provided in section 59. But if the sale has already commenced, then the provision has to be a little stricter, saying that the approval of all unpaid creditors, regardless of 2/3 in value, it should be for all unpaid creditors, whether they would like to allow that withdrawal of voluntary liquidation or not. And another situation could be where the dues of all the creditors are settled before passing of the special resolution. Then, of course, the creditors will not come into picture because there are no creditors, so no approval could be required. At the end of the day, whether it is liquidation or voluntary liquidation, it is done for the benefit of the creditors only. So that is what the focal point is in any liquidation. So what is the proposed amendment which is required, which is proposed to be made, is that liquidator will file an application to the adjudicating authority, and there will be an affirmation from the liquidator. Number one, that due process for withdrawal of voluntary liquidation has been followed. That means the special resolution has been passed, and obviously the creditor's approval has also been taken. in under both the stages. It could be that stage where the no sale has taken place, or it could be a stage where a sale has taken place and partial claims have been settled. And then secondly, he should also mention that withdrawal is not initiated with an intent to defraud any person and the corporate person is solvent. So this is also to be seen. And one of our friends also mentioned the Gujarat High Court judgment where they have said that the court will also look into compliance of laws, whether the company was compliant. Will be an affirmation to be filed by the liquidator or not. And then after the application is allowed by the adjudicating authority, then the liquidator will forward the copy to the IBBI as well as to the corporate person. In fact, here I think we should also note that maybe the liquidator should also forward it to the registrar of companies, because registrar of companies may have changed the status of the company to in liquidation. So obviously, if the process is withdrawn, so that additional authority should also be included here. Anyway, we are going to discuss all these issues. What is the justification which has been given? I'm just going to read very quickly as per the discussion paper, that it may help save the company, a viable company, from dissolution, so that it can again come back on rails and the resources which are there, they are not destroyed. So this is, and in fact, the interest of the stakeholders will be served. That is what it says. And then if we look at the regulations which is proposed now, that is regulation 4A, which is proposed to be added, well, it will also bring us that there will be a framework which is there under which the withdrawal is done, rather than on the discretion of the corporate person, and there will be more clarity. That is what it says, it talks about, that there will be a guided path to the stakeholders for a streamlined option on the ex ante basis. So this is an extremely important statement. Now, here are the 2 points of discussion where we can start the discussion. These are the 2 questions on which IBBI is looking for suggestions. Number 1, should there be a provision for withdrawal from the voluntary liquidation process? If such withdrawal is approved by the resolution of members, partners, or contributories, as the case may be in voluntary liquidation regulations, if so, whether such withdrawal is to be approved by adjudicating authority. So friends, we need to talk about 2 important aspects. Number 1, do you feel that should there be a provision for withdrawal, or should there not be any provision? Like once a voluntary liquidation starts, should it go to the last mile, or can it be stopped in between and the withdrawal should be permitted as what has been proposed by IBBI in the discussion paper? So I think if any comments of the members are there, we can start discussing on those aspects also. Yes, any member who would like to contribute on this particular aspect?
So, Ashish, if you permit me.
Yes. Yes, sir.
So, incidentally, the first case of voluntary liquidation was where I was appointed as a liquidator. And it was completely sort of situation where what to do. And as regarding the question you asked, voluntary liquidation, yes, it should be permitted. And it is better that it is with approval of the adjudicating authority. The reason being, I'll briefly share my experience, because the company was approaching me for withdrawal. I said there's no provision except regulation 40, which talks about that if the company is not solvent or if it is for defrauding the creditors. There's no third option. And I referred it to IBBI, and there was no response immediately. And they, in the meantime, proposed a special EGM, passed a special resolution. And one fine day, they tell me that this resolution has been passed and you are no longer the liquidator. So I was not worried on that part, but my worry was more on the part of IBBI. If I will face disciplinary action in this regard, because there is no provision, the company has taken back, and I don't have any authority to ask for such thing. The only option could have been that I go to adjudicating authority, file an application, have a decision on that. So it is proper that if the withdrawal is to be done, it has to be done with the approval of adjudicating authority, so that there are justifiable reasons for it.
I think, friends, may I request everyone to please mute themselves so that there are no background noises. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Madhusudanji, please go ahead.
Yeah, that's what on your first question. That yes,
Okay.
it should be allowed, and it should be allowed with the approval of adjudicating authority, so that the liquidator is not removed unceremoniously.
Okay, so that is one part of it that that you are saying yes, you are supporting the process that it should be done. So any person who is saying that it should not be done, can we have some more views? Yes,
Can I speak?
Ms. India, you can go ahead. Mr. You can go ahead if you are hearing me.
Yeah. See, my experience is something different. The case laws which you have referred of the Allahabad Code and this thing, because in earlier companies like 1956, I have withdrawn such one case which was going on for 12 years as such, and which was a listed entity on the Bombay Stock Exchange, which was under voluntary liquidation. At that time, just now I'm not finding that decision. I'm having one copy with me, but High Court clearly said that we don't have any authority under the company that to deal with it. Don't come to us. You can, by passing a special resolution, you can stop the voluntary liquidation. And I think the process should be like that, because it is a voluntary they are coming with, which is a solvent company. So they should not be dragged to the court process. If somebody wants to take it out, somebody means again the stakeholders, shareholders only. If they pass the resolution, they can supersede their own resolution. If they pass it again with a special resolution, it should be taken out of the liquidation without involving again adjudicating authority and getting the process delayed unnecessarily. This is what is my view.
Okay, so Mr. Milind, you are saying is that the process has been started by passing a special resolution, and of course with the approval of the creditors, because the approval of the creditor was not a requirement under the Companies Act. This has become a requirement under Section 59 only. In Section 59, there are two requirements. Number one is that special resolution must be passed, and 2/3 of the creditors in value must approve that special resolution. But that approval of the creditor was not there in the Companies Act. Here we have got two. So you are saying that once the shareholders again pass a special resolution and the creditors also approve it, then there is no there should not be any requirement of going back to the adjudicating. That is what you are trying to say?
Yes, sir, correct.
Okay. So friends, now here is a debate which we have started, that there is a one view which says that adjudicating authorities' permission must be taken. And the second view which has been is that he says that adjudicating authorities should not come into picture at this stage. So can we have some views in support and against this particular aspect so that we can move forward?
Can I add something in this?
Yes, sir. Quickly. Yeah.
Quickly, I will add this thing, because the presentation which you made, that in that also the entire theme where the adjudicating authority is not at all involved in the process. The reporting is also to the corporate data.
Okay, we have got your point, because you are saying that in any case, when we start the process and even during the process, the adjudicating authority is not involved. So why should we involve them at the stage of closure of the or withdrawal of the liquidation? That is, we have understood your point, sir. Let other participants also contribute their views. Yes, anyone
Sir,
else?
if you allow, I would like to make a small point here.
Yes, Megha.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, my view is that once a voluntary liquidation process commences, it only ends, it reaches finality once the application is filed before the adjudicating authority. So that is a form of termination of the process. Now, if you want to withdraw, that is also a form of termination, and hence the role of adjudicating authority should be there. That's my view, sir.
Okay, so you are saying that when we close down the company, when we dissolve the company, which is the last step of
Yes,
the
sir.
liquidation, obviously we'll have to go back to the adjudicating authority.
Adjudicating.
And in any case, under the Companies Act also, if the voluntary winding up, the entire process was complete, the application was made by the official liquidator along with this report to the High Court to dissolve the company. So dissolution order is generally passed by the High Court or the adjudicating authority. So that is why you are saying that even this is also a voluntary closure of or withdrawal. So therefore, the adjudicating authority should
So
do
you
that.
can say termination of the process in either case, either dissolution or withdrawal. In any case, that process is getting terminated. One of the
Okay.
method is requiring the adjudicating authority's approval. The second should also. That's my view, sir.
Okay. Okay. Any other member who would like to contribute in support or against? Yes, Geeta ma'am. Yes, go ahead.
Sir, I have a point. See, when you opted for a voluntary liquidation, you had a reason for going for a voluntary one. But then, how suddenly a circumstance has changed to even look for a withdrawal, and especially when it is into an extent that it is going to lead to a revival of a company. When all along it has not happened, how suddenly it can happen, and then you will look for a withdrawal at all. That's my view on it.
So what you're trying to say is that okay. Yes, I think Mr. Vipin.
Vishal.
Vishal.
Yes. Yeah. Sir, time and again in IBC, we are seeing Supreme Court is giving preference to commercial wisdom of the COC and their COC here members as well as creditors. अगर commercial wisdom में कोई भी डिसीजन लिया जाता है कि भी हम वॉलंटरी लिक्विडेशन को विड्रॉ करने के लिए सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, तो it should be given left to the commercial wisdom of that particular group of people, and should not come to again for adjudicating authority, whose role is just to endorse their commercial wisdom. It's my personal view.
Okay, so Vishalji, if I have understood you completely, you are trying to bring in the concept of the commercial wisdom of the COC. Of course, in voluntary liquidation, there is no COC, but you are saying that it could be taken as the wisdom of the shareholders as well as the creditors combined. Right. So that could be considered as a commercial wisdom which is there. But right. Sir, let me also draw one attention before I go to Mr. Rajkamal. Let me also share one thing. That there is a section 12A which talks about withdrawal of application after admission. Now, in that case, of course, the settlement happens between the creditors and the corporate debtor. But before withdrawal, again, 90% of the committee of creditors approve it, and then we go back again to the adjudicating authority for withdrawal. The reason was because the process was started by adjudicating authority, therefore we have to go back to the adjudicating authority. Here you are simply saying that since the process has been started only by the shareholders as well as creditors, so there should not be any need to go back to the adjudicating authority. Okay. Yes, Rajkamal, yes, you want to say something?
In this question, there are two parts. One is whether it should be allowed. Another is whether we should go to the adjudicating authority or not. As far as the first question is concerned, there is anonymous view that it should be allowed. Now the thing is, whether it should go to the adjudicating authority or not, my view is that since a check and balances for any process started needs to be certified by an independent adjudicating or independent authority, and in this case, whether it is the adjudicating authority or somebody else, it should be have a process. It can be Ministry of Finance also, it can be MC also, but it should be that the check and balances should be done by independent. And in that case, if it is proposed that it's an adjudicating authority, I endorse that view that it should be there.
Okay, so what you're saying is that there should be some authority. I mean, you are saying that it can be not only adjudicating authority, it can be even IBBI also as a regulatory authority which can come into picture at this stage. But IBBI in its discussion paper has put the ball in the court of the adjudicating authority. They said, well, let them have that kind of the checks and balances which should be there. And in fact, the next question only talks about the certain checks and balances and what is the need and what is the stage. But this is a very good debate which we are having, that whether we should go or not. So any other member who would like to contribute?
So one small.
Yes, just
one small point.
Yeah, Megha, just very quickly, and then we'll go to Amit Gupta. Yes.
Yes, sir. So another perspective here could be, once the public announcement is issued, there's a public involvement in the voluntary liquidation process. So that may also be one reason for going to the adjudicating authority for the withdrawal process.
Okay, see, public announcement is made for two purposes. One, to announce to the public that the company is under liquidation, and secondly, we invite the claims. So, well, if the withdrawal happens, obviously another public announcement can also be made. So this is a good point which you are making, that once the withdrawal is also could be one of the things which can be looked into. That's a good suggestion. Yes, Amitji, Amitji, if you can contribute.
Yes, Ashish ji, thank you. First of all, first point, there is no dispute. I believe we all are in agreement that yes, voluntary liquidation, withdrawal may be necessary in certain circumstances. And one of the circumstances, in addition, what you have already mentioned, can be that company is no longer a solvent, which is a precondition for Section 59. Maybe there could be a misstatement, there could be a misunderstanding, maybe IP comes or the voluntary liquidator comes to the notice later that company is no longer solvent and it needs to be taken to a different process. Then definitely it is one of the additional ground for withdrawal of the process. Number two, when it comes to whether it should be subjected to the adjudicating authority approval or not, I will say I will go with the middle path. The middle path, what I am suggesting is, there could be one situation where I have just been appointed as a voluntary liquidator. No material sale has been done out of the assets of a company. No distribution has been done. And we want to withdraw the process because of some technical reason. There should not be any involvement of adjudicating authority, as Milind sir has rightly mentioned. But there could be the other end also. The other end could be that sale of certain substantial asset has already taken place and that distribution has also taken place. In those situations, if we don't put a check on these companies, this route could be adopted by many people for distribution of money to the shareholders, maybe in form of buyback of shares, in replacement to buyback of shares, or in replacement to the reduction of capital. So, of course, this should be checked. This cannot go unnoticed. That is the small point which I wanted to bring to the table. We can discuss it further, but to begin, I think these yardsticks we can make. I think both are right. This will be giving the leeway also sufficient to the corporates who actually have done nothing, but they want to withdraw the process. No problem. If you have done nothing, then the process can be withdrawn without subjecting yourself to the adjudicating authority. Other cases, yes, should be.
I would like to.
Okay, I think let me just cover what Mr. Amit has said. Now he says that in fact whether the approval of adjudicating authority is required or not, this could be bifurcated into two parts. Where nothing has been done, it is a withdrawal simpliciter. At the initial stages, he says, why should we involve adjudicating authority? They are already quite overburdened, as we have also seen. So why to overburden the adjudicating authorities to this aspect? And second, he says, if the process has already gone under, maybe 10% or 20% the process has started, then of course we should involve adjudicating authority. So this is what you are trying to say, Mr. Amit?
Yes, absolutely. You understand.
Correct. Okay. Yes, yes, Mr. Bipin, you wanted
Yeah,
to.
one small rejoinder.
Yeah.
Whatever we are talking about the check and balances through the adjudicating authority. Now, in our insolvency laws, liquidator has given power of adjudication also in addition to all procedural powers. So, for the cases who are liquidation under voluntary regime is a simpliciter is a liquidation is a small companies kind of thing or a small assets kind of thing. It can be through voluntary liquidator itself. It should not go to the adjudicating authority. In my view.
Okay, see, as far as adjudication is concerned, well, I must say that the power of the liquidator to adjudicate is pretty limited. That is only with respect to the claims and not with respect to the other legal matters. So I think we'll have to take it with a pinch of salt slightly. Yes, I think Mr. Bipin wanted to say something. Yes, Mr. Ravichandra, I'll come back to you, Mr. Bipin.
Yes, sir.
Actually, yeah, yes.
I had a view that adjudicating authority may not be involved if you want to withdraw the voluntary liquidation. Larger perspective being that the ease of doing business should be the larger perspective. Liquidation anyway is death. And if the commercial wisdom of board of directors and the shareholders, they come to a conclusion that circumstances have changed and they can revive the company. So the process should be such that it can be faster and agile and so that business can go on. And also the fact is that adjudicating authority is already overburdened. And so why clog this for this administrative thing? It may lie with them for a couple of months and the process will get derailed. That's my limited view.
Okay. So you are saying that for ease of doing business, so that is another perspective which has come, ease of doing business. The freedom should be given to the corporate person as and when they want to start, as they want to withdraw. So that should be allowed. So that is your view. Okay, we respect that view. Yes, Mr. Ravichandran.
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I had the opportunity of handling this voluntary liquidation a year back. Only thing is that the board resolution was passed, the declaration of solvency was there, we got the auditor certificate, everything, EGM was there, everything was over. Only thing is we got stuck in that getting the 2/3 of creditor actually. Okay. We stopped with that and we had to go back to that. As you just just now you said that where this AI was not involved before, just before the public announcement stage, where we had to stop the whole thing actually and go back to that. So that I also feel that it should be opportunity should be given to the company for withdrawing this.
If I'm clear, what you are saying is that you are supporting the view that adjudicating authority should not be involved in withdrawal. That's
should
what
not be involved. Should not be involved unless we have crossed that stage. In this case, even before the public announcement, we had to get the approval of creditor, but at that stage we failed actually. Creditor, we could not get the approval.
Okay, we'll come to the stage part. Of course, IDBI in its discussion paper has actually considered two stages, where the initiation of the process and the second is that where the process has not been initiated. So process can be initiated by coming out with a public announcement or through a start of the sale or maybe the auction notice also. But there could be a thing. Supposing I have come out with an auction notice, but I have not sold anything. So should that be considered as the process has not been initiated? Or I think that also requires clarity. We'll come to that question number 2. But I think we are now debating whether it should be done or not, and some interesting views have come. Yes, Mr. Madhusudan, I think you wanted to.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a small point after seeing the discussion where people are not in favor of allowing the adjudicating authorities role. I don't know whether there is anyone else whose case has been withdrawn. But since I have faced the situation, I would like to share it because in my case, the company took opinion from ex-chairperson of the company law board to assess whether voluntary liquidation can be taken back after a special resolution of the companies. Now, let us see a practical situation. Liquidator is representing a public function. A person who is authorized by IBBI, the whole public process is getting involved into this process. And the company, just by passing a special resolution, will say that, okay, liquidator, tomorrow you are not required. So that may make mockery of the whole system. It should be a serious effort. Like if they wanted to voluntarily liquidate, they should be serious about it. And if there is any opportunity which is coming in, which needs revival, then they should handle it properly. It should not be that all of a sudden they just pass a special resolution and tell the liquidator, okay, go by. So that process has to be there. And since Megha has already pointed out that public announcement was made for initiating voluntary liquidation, same way the public announcement should also be made when it is being withdrawn.
Okay, so you are saying that once a decision is taken, then it no longer is in the four corners of the corporate person. Now that becomes a public decision because the whole public is also involved. They are invited to file claims, and of course, a public representative is also appointed, which is the insolvency professional. So if we have to stop that process, then it cannot be done just by passing a resolution once again. Well, that should be one requirement, but then again, the adjudicating authority should step in and also take a decision. So I think these are very interesting views which have come up. Yes, Mr. Ganti, I think you want to say something. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a small point that once the voluntary liquidation process starts, the status on the MCA website changes to under liquidation. Now to reverse it, they will ask for an order from NCLT. They will not wait for this.
Okay, of course.
I don't have any way of.
Okay, as far as MCA is concerned, I would say that they have changed the status.
The status without an order.
Okay, that is. I would still consider. Just a sec, Mr. Ravi. I would still consider that you see MCA is only a procedural. They can change the status back to that again, so they may not require that for that purposes. But yes, your point is also valid that since MCA is also a public forum where the status is changed, so again to change back the status, there should be an approval of adjudicating. Yes, Mr. Amit, you wanted to say something?
No, I think you have already mentioned. I was about to say the same thing that it is once the law is in place saying the withdrawal in this manner and does not require the adjudicating authority, perhaps that will take care of the requirement of the ROC also. So that point is well taken. Yeah.
Okay. So friends, before we conclude, are there any other opinions? Yes, I think one or two of our, Mr. Sasitran. Your voice, sir, may I just interrupt you here? Your voice is not clear. You see, it is broken in between, so we're not able to hear you clearly, sir.
Am I clear?
Well, it is coming, but it is. I mean, I'm not able to hear it so properly. Yes, you can try again once again, sir. Yeah.
The issue here is that the promoters are considering.
I think, sir, we are not. I think, sir, we are not able to hear you clearly because it is broken. Yeah, you can write in the chat box whatever your comments are there, sir, and we will come back to you if your audio works properly. Yes, you wanted to contribute further.
Hey, see the point which was raised about MCA updation. So those issues were also faced, but if you make a provision in the law about the withdrawal of this thing, on the basis of that provision, MCA can update the things. I don't think so they will require any order from any authority for that.
Okay. So friends, yeah, I think there is one more to add something.
So this is Subramania from IBB. Just I want to add one point here. The logic behind the requirement of approval of adjudicating authority is, see, the withdrawal process should not be, I mean, without any proper rational or valid reason. So many times what happens, this is some of the, I mean, observations by some of the market participants. Instead of, selling the assets on piecemeal basis in liquidation, if the the business concern is sold as a, as an entity, the whole entity is sold. Or see what happens if the entity does not have any asset except some land and building, what happens if land and building is sold, it will attract registration and stamp duty. Instead of that, if simply the shareholders change, suppose it is a private limited company having only 3 or 4 shareholders, and if those 3 or 4 shareholders' entire shareholding has been replaced by the new buyer, so he can avoid stamp duty and registration fees. So, I mean, the purpose of voluntary liquidation withdrawal is not to avoid any stamp duty or government revenue. There should be a valid reason that the company has some activity and there is a business opportunity and somebody wants to utilize that business opportunity, and then it can be allowed. So, for that purpose, the approval of the adjudicating authority will be better, and it will not, the government will not have any impression that the process is misutilized just to evade government revenue. So I think if adjudicating authority's approval is taken, that would be better. That is my opinion. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so you are making a case that there could be a withdrawal decision which could be evading the stamp duty, and that could also be there, which should not be permitted. Obviously, we all agree with you to that extent that the process of legal process should not be manipulated to give benefit to someone at the cost of the revenue.
Correct.
There's no quarrel to that. Okay. Yes, Mr. Milind. Yes, quickly.
Sir, I don't agree with this thing because we are assuming that this is a manipulation. This is a planning actually. And whatever legally with that planning, if stamp duty is paid, we cannot call it as a manipulation for
that. Which is coming is, once you have taken a conscious decision, you see, by passing a special resolution, was that you wanted to liquidate, and liquidation obviously means sale of the assets and then giving the money back to the creditors or the shareholders in the form of whatever realization has come. So what suddenly has changed? Because you see, you can, if there is a genuine business opportunity, no one is denying that you can take it back. But the fact is, somebody must look into these reasons. So what is the harm if any authority looks into those reasons? And this will be a short application. It's not going to be a very long time consuming process, because once the resolution is passed and the reasons are stated and an affirmation is filed by the liquidator, then adjudicating authority will quickly look into those reasons, whether they are justified or not. So they want some authority to be looking into this. So anyway, I'm not saying that this should happen. We have to, give our suggestions and comments. Well, now, friends, there are 3 views which have emerged now. Well, maximum number of the people, I would say that they are with the view that yes, adjudicating authority should come into picture. There is some, in some quarters, it is felt that adjudicating authority should not be involved at all. So I is saying that we could bifurcate into 2 parts. In certain circumstances, it could require where there is absolutely no process has gone further. So then adjudicating authority need not be involved. There is a view which I would say the majority of the view is that the adjudicating authority's approval should be taken. There is a minority view which says that adjudicating authority should not be involved, and then there could be bifurcation into 2 parts, that whether the adjudicating authority should be involved or not. It should be involved in case the process has begun, that some effective steps have been taken. If the effective steps have not been taken, then it should not be involved. So that is the third view which has also emerged. Well, I think this is what we wanted to convey to IBBI with all our suggestions. And I think reasons have also been stated at many places. So anyone who wants to contribute quickly to this first issue, otherwise we can move on to the second issue. Okay, I think both of us we have already conveyed. So let me share my discussion. The second point of discussion, that number 1, and here it says, should the withdrawal from voluntary liquidation process be permitted both prior to and post initiation of the process of sale of assets? So here the word which has been emphasized by IBBI is the sale of assets of the corporate person. Now, I could also anticipate that there are many stages. Number 1, he has come out with a public announcement. Well, for invitation of claim and informing the public that the process is on. Second could be the sale of assets, the auction notice has gone. And third could be auction notice has gone and the some holds. Okay. Anyhow, IBBI one. If so, what conditions should be imposed to ensure proper checks and balances on such withdrawal? Now, the focal point, because all of us agreed that withdrawal should be permitted. Now, the only question which we have to discuss is, supposing a process has already started, that means initiation of the sale of asset is already undergone. Well, should that be allowed at that stage? Because there could be a partial sale of assets. Supposing company has got, say, 3 lands and building. 1 land has already been sold, but 2 other lands were not sold. So should this be allowed at this stage also? Or should it be allowed when no asset has been sold? So this is sold. So this is what is a very important point which needs to contribute their views on this also. So anyone who would like to contribute on this particular aspect? So do you think that this is one of the interesting aspects is that supposing I have come out with a public announcement and we all agree that it can be allowed to be withdrawn. But the important aspect which we need to understand is that supposing the process has begun of sale of the assets, partial sale could also take place, no sale could take place, and if the complete sale has taken place. Of course, if the complete sale has taken place, there is no point of going back because there is no question of any revival or this thing. But no sale or partial sale. So these are the 2 aspects which we need to debate, that what should be the checks and balances at this stage. Like the checks and balances as recommended by IBBI is that A, special resolution, B, 2/3 of the creditors in case nothing has been sold, the process of sale of initiation of sale has not come into process. And third, where partial sale has happened, then approval of all unpaid creditors. So this is the checks and balances which IBBI suggested. And plus, of course, the last checks and balances that adjudicating authorities approval to be required. So I think we need to really debate on this. Yes, any members who would like to contribute on this?
Ashish, if you permit me.
Yes, sir, go ahead.
Going by the opinion of the members regarding involvement of adjudicating authority, my view is that let us keep it simple in the sense that there should be proper checks and balances in the sense that withdrawal is for a justifiable reason. And that could be at any stage. If we are giving that authority to the members or shareholders, after managing these balances like approval of creditors or public notification authority, we should not put any other conditions in that, to keep it simple.
Okay, so you are also supporting the view that a special resolution, of course, is required. There is no quarrel on that because it started with that. Obviously, the same authority should pass that it should be withdrawn.
Yes.
Second, you are saying that approval of the creditors also required because it is also a part of Section 59. Third, I think you supported in the beginning that adjudicating authority should step in. So that is also one of the checks and balances which you also supported. So are you still with that or you have changed your opinion on that?
I am still with that.
Okay.
Termination has to be with the approval of adjudicating authority with a justifiable reason so that they can justify the action. It should not be a decision just to reverse it for any ulterior motive. Like Mr. Subramaniam told that to save the stamp duty, we say that there is a prospect of business and we withdraw it.
Well, no one would write a reason that we want to, evade the stamp duty. So anyway, they will create some more reasons. But anyhow, your point is well taken. But sir, there is another catch to it. The stage of liquidation. See, please understand, withdrawal is fine. Per se, it looks very simple on paper that you pass a special resolution, you also take the approval of the creditors and adjudicating authority, matter is over. But the stage of liquidation, sir, it is very important. Supposing you have partially sold the assets. There can be lot of situations, like IBBI is only anticipating one situation. I can anticipate many more situations also. Sale has taken place, but the money has not been distributed. And partial sale has taken and money not distributed. Partial sale taken place and money partially distributed. So there can be n number of situations. So the view of the member on what stage it should be considered, what stage it should not be considered, and if it is to be considered at a later stage, then what additional checks and balances should be there. So I think that is what IBBI is looking for. You see a discussion on this particular point. So anyone, Megha, if you have any issue, any point?
Yes, so exactly in line with what you've mentioned. Yes, sir. So I think that exactly like you mentioned, in case of a partial sale where the assets have been partially sold. So very naturally, the assets which have been sold actually had some value and there were interested buyers. So I am left with assets which nobody wants to buy. Now, if I am saying that I revive at this stage, so the company is left with assets, A, that nobody wants to buy. And second, when we speak of withdrawal, we actually mean bringing back the company to the same status as it was before the commencement of liquidation. But right now I'm at a stage. So how is it revival? So the idea behind withdrawal was that my company will be able to revive. So right now, if I am without those assets, which could actually be useful, and I'm only left with those assets which nobody is interested in or does not seem, very very worthy to me. So how is it a revival, and then what's the meaning of the withdrawal? So according to me, yes.
Okay, so Megha, what I can gather from your point of view is that, again, like Mr. Madhusudan Sharma has mentioned, the justifiable reasons. So reasons must be there so that, and somebody should look into those reasons, whether they are justified or not. Somebody has to apply its own mind, and that authority could be the adjudicating authority, as IBBI has also proposed in this particular circumstances. Now, the aspect which is very important, which everyone needs to consider is this. The stage. See, again, I'm coming back to the stage of the liquidation. Well, Megha has given one situation where the rest of the assets have no value, but I can say there are partial assets which still have some value. So can the company be revived? Again, that situation will come. So stage of
if I'm allowed yes, sir. Sorry, sir. You may please complete, sir.
Yeah. So stage of liquidation is a very, very important factor in the whole game. That is what is required. So we need to discuss what additional checks and balances could be imposed if a stage is at a later stage. Say 50% assets are sold, 50% remaining. Well, whether should we allow at this stage or not? Yes.
So my point here would be, almost reiterating my previous point, that once I have any assets that have been sold and I have received the consideration, it has been distributed, I don't think we'll be able to go back to the initial stage at which the liquidation began. So my point is yes, sir. Yes,
so
when we speak of it.
Okay. Yeah, you're saying that some of the assets are already sold. So where is the question of revival now? That's what you're saying?
Yes, so I should either go back to the same stage or a better stage after liquidation, right? After withdrawal, right, sir? So if that is not being achieved, then what's the question of withdrawal? And the second question, sir.
Yeah, please complete. Sorry.
Yes, sir. And so the second point would be, let's say we want to withdraw. So there can also be this aspect of, do we want the asset back, which is already been sold? In that case, is that a possible scenario at all, or either practical to, get back the asset once it's sold?
Okay, so getting back the asset, of course, will not be possible because you see, once the asset is sold, then again we are coming into a lot of litigation. But one of the important point which is coming out of your discussion is, which I also thought, like supposing I sell, say, a 10 crore property today, and I partially settle the claim. So I will settle the claim in order of priority. So that means the secured creditors and the workmen and those people will be paid. Now, when it comes to the stage of unsecured creditors, there is another property, but now I say, okay, I don't want a voluntary liquidation. I will withdraw that process of liquidation. So it is here I'm giving advantage to the secured creditors over the unsecured creditors, isn't it?
Yes,
and stopping the process in between. So this could be one of the criteria which should be looked into this. Okay. Vishalji, you want to continue something?
Yes, taking forward my earlier submission, commercial wisdom again to be must prevail over the scenario. Now, if something is decided in between, after even after partially initiating the partially selling of the assets, then it should go to the adjudicating authority. To that extent, it is accepted. But before that, as a only for the procedure simplicity or the small companies which having negligible assets or assets are not that much valuable, so these should go to the adjudicating authority earlier. Now, second stage, after partial selling of the assets, if it is that much complex, then the adjudicating authority can see what is the justifiable reason behind.
Vishali, your point is well taken, but the fact is, who is going to decide that this is a small company or the assets are negligible? I think, you see, somebody has to apply his mind to this aspect also. Well, it could be 10 crore, it could be a small for you, but it could be a bigger amount for somebody else, isn't it? And in any case, in every company, there are creditors. So we have to look at the interest of the creditor. So I think we should not be bifurcating on the basis of the value of the assets or the small or the size of the company. I think it should be applicable throughout. Yes, I think there are 3-4 more people, Mr. Rajkamal, Ms. Geeta and Milind. I think one by one you can start contributing. Yes, Mr. Rajkamal, you go first.
As far as allowing at the after the partial disposal of assets, my view is even if the entire assets had been sold and all the creditors have been paid, and the same set of shareholders wants to venture the other business, then in that case also, why it should not be allowed? Because after all, the purpose is that to create a business venture. So if there is no malified intention, if that is allowed at the time of to be withdrawal, I think that should be allowed. At any stage, it should be allowed.
Okay, so now you are coming to the extreme point of view that where even all the assets are sold and all the creditors are paid. So you are trying to say that outside creditors are paid and not the shareholders.
No, definitely. Even if you cannot pay the shareholders, in my view, even when you have to pay all the shareholders at a one go, because partial reduction of capital is something has different meaning. So that should not be at all allowed. If no single penny will be paid to any of the shareholders, then in that stage also it should be allowed of the withdrawal. That is my view.
Okay, so that means the company is not left with any assets. They are sold, creditors are paid, but the shareholders want that the company should continue. In that case, even withdrawal should be allowed. Okay. Okay, that is one of the extreme points. So we respect your opinion, sir. Yes, anyone else who wants to say yes, Geeta ma'am? Yes.
Yeah, sorry for interrupting. I actually wanted to continue.
Yes, Chakshu. Yes, Chakshu. Yeah, Geeta ma'am, just give me a second. Yes, Chakshu.
So we are having Mr. Ritesh. He wants to say something.
Okay, Ritesh ji, welcome, sir, to this discussion. So I think we would like to hear from you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Just a small point, we could not write in the discussion paper, but suppose a liquidator is not agreeable to this withdrawal, but the corporate person decides that withdrawal should be there. Suppose the liquidator finds some fraudulent activities there and he wants to proceed to the AA, and in the meantime, sensing that the promoter says, okay, leave it, I want to withdraw. At least liquidator shall get some forum, say his version if the proceedings go to A. If the proceedings do not go to A, liquidator won't get a chance. That was a limited point.
Okay, so your point is well taken, sir. That supposing the decision is taken by the shareholders as well as by the creditors, but there are certain instances which have come to the light of the liquidator. So his view should also be considered by some authority. So therefore, adjudicating authority must come into picture where he will be able to express his views that whether this withdrawal should be permitted or not. So I think you are making a case for going back to the adjudicating authority also. So interesting point. Yes, Geeta, I'm sorry I stopped you in between earlier.
Perfectly understandable, sir. See, I was trying to, counter Megha's point on one count that she was saying that when the assets have been sold and then what is not taken is left out in the company. But what I'm saying is, if that is a very crucial asset for the business and that is available in the company, revival is still possible. So it is not by the. It is not by the.
Ma'am, can you just elaborate on what you are trying to explain?
Me, sir? Yeah, I'm just going to work on it. See, it is when there is a partial sale of asset. So whether we should go for withdrawal or not is a question. So Megha had a point where she said that whatever can be sold has been sold, and money has been distributed, and there are assets which cannot be sold. That's only lying in the company. I'm looking at a different perspective for the same. See, those are the crucial assets for the business, and that could not be sold for some reason. So where revival could be possible because those assets are already available with us.
Okay, so Megha actually anticipated one situation where those assets were left which were not saleable, kind of, and they were not very important assets. But you are anticipating a situation where a surplus land has been sold, but the effective property of the company is still with the company, so therefore the decision to revive can be taken. So I think that's another view which has come. So Megha, I think
kindly, very shortly and briefly answer once. Ma'am, thank you for your view. I would just say, let's say a company has 100. Let's say my assets are 100. Now I go into liquidation. I've sold 40. Whenever I revive, I still have 60, which is lower than my 100. So that was my very prelim point, if I could put it like that. And while discussion, another thought that came to mind. Let's say, we hope not, but let's say there is a fraudulent intention. Once I go into liquidation, all my valuations are on liquidation basis. So I can probably hive off a particular asset, go for withdrawal, bring back my company, and then have the remaining assets on a going concern value. Which if I otherwise had to sell my assets, that would be on going concern value way higher than the liquidation value. So that aspect could also be seen here.
Okay. Well, Megha, I before I go to any other member, I think if you look at the proposed regulations, particularly Regulation 4A and Sub-Regulation 2, which anticipates a situation where you see the process of has already begun, where maybe a partial sale has taken place. There they say that instead of 2/3 of the creditors, then all unpaid creditors should now approve it. So I think this is a very good check and balance, that if they do not want, well, nothing will happen. And supposing even a single member says, I don't want withdrawal will fall. So I think this is a very good check and balance to the decision of the shareholders who may be manipulating. We don't know. They may be right, they may be wrong. So I think this is an important check which has already been placed there. So
agreed, sir.
Let's hear from Ajay Singhal. Oh, sorry, Milinji. Milinji, you have been waiting for such a long time. I think yes, sir. Please, you go ahead first. Yes.
Sir, all these points where we are thinking of, they are manipulating or doing anything. The first question, the authority which has passed the resolution, he is having a right to supersede the resolution. And where there are two checks. First, in this case, is the shareholders with a special resolution, creditors with the 2/3 majority. Now, even if we presume that some creditors are paid, so there are no more creditors, so the remaining 2/3 needs to approve it. So that commercial has to be taken into consideration. And one thing only we can add as a check and balance, if anybody is aggrieved of this decision, he can go to A instead of going directly to A for everything. Aggrieved party can go. It can be a liquidator, it can be a creditor, it can be a shareholder, and like in case of mergers and amalgamations also, dissenting people will go to the A. The dissenting people will go to the A for that matter. Instead of, we are blocking the process for this reason that, and then the entire process may take n number of days. Nobody knows about that thing of revival. If anybody is aggrieved, he can go to AA for that matter and get a suitable order for that.
Okay, so Milinji, I think the business people will be very happy with your view, because you are time and again you are saying that commercial wisdom of the corporate world should prevail. But sir, let me also share 2-3 things, because I think many concerns have been expressed by other members also. Even in case of merger also, sir, it is a commercial wisdom of the company, but still we go to the tribunal to get their approval, isn't it? So therefore, the involvement of the appellate tribunal, because please understand this, till the time you have taken a decision, it is a decision in kind of a persona. But the moment you take a decision, now it becomes an kind of a process in rem against the whole world, because the stakeholders' interests are also affected. It is not only the creditors, but other stakeholders also come into picture. Because please understand one more aspect. The moment the liquidation commencement date is there, all employees are terminated. Now, could the corporate world be not doing this? Because then everybody is terminated, and then they want to revive back. They don't take back any of the employees on their roll. They say, now since you are already terminated.
Sir, in case of voluntary liquidation, it doesn't happen like that.
Well,
you have to terminate them with all the benefits.
No, that of course I understand, because that particular section 33 and 34 are not applicable in case of voluntary liquidation. But I'm just saying people can start manipulating, because once you start the process, you may give a golden handshake to the employees and then say, okay, now we'll come back. So I think there could be certain situations. So anyhow, your view is well taken, sir, that you are still a votary for the commercial wisdom, and you are standing strong on that. Yes, sir. I think some other members wanted to express their view. Can we have other views also very quickly, sir? Okay, I'm not seeing any more hands being raised or anyone wants to make a point. So, okay. So, friends, I think the situations which need to be anticipated can be not only two situations where the process is initiated, but again, the stage of the process is also very, very important. That whether a public notice for the auction of the sale has come out or not, two, whether it has been given effect to or not, and in what stage it has been given effect to. So all these stages are extremely important. But the fact of the matter is that the moment you come out with the public announcement or the sale notice, well, then in that case, the process has to have interesting checks and balance, which is, according to IBBI also, that all unpaid creditors' approval must be taken, which is, I believe, that's my personal opinion, that it is a good provision which is there, which has a checks and balance. Now, one more aspect which is there, and I think more of us should also be concerned about it, is supposing the process is withdrawn. There are two things which can come. Number one, there could be a possibility of avoidance transactions. What will be the fate of those two? And what will be the fate of the fee of the liquidator? Now, that is because supposing for the whole process, the liquidator fees was, say, settled at X amount. Now, supposing only the public announcement has been made. So should he be paid, remunerated? Double, isn't it? And if we leave it to the wisdom of these shareholders, again, then the liquidators will be at the mercy of the shareholders only. So if the matter can go back to the adjudicating authority, they can also decide. So some issue is also can come up on the fee of the liquidator, because we have been seeing that liquidators and other people are also not being paid at many stages. So this is one of the important aspects. So one is avoidance transactions, fate of avoidance transactions. Like one of our, one of the executive member of executive director of IBBI also raised this issue, that there could be fraudulent transactions. So I'm not only saying fraudulent, I'm saying avoidance transactions. So I think we should also discuss on these two aspects, the fee of the liquidator and the avoidance transaction, fate of the avoidance transactions, if any noted during that process. So any members who will like to contribute on these two aspects?
Yeah, Ashishji, I want to make one small point on the previous point where the proposal is that withdrawal would require the consent of 100% of the creditors. Okay. I'm just highlighting one situation. There could be many. It should not result like one of the creditor is not giving a consent, and because of that, maybe you are in compulsion to withdraw the process because of the technical glitches or the technical reasons, and you are still holded because the law says that unless you have a consent, you can't go ahead. So there should be some exception, I fairly agree that the interest of the creditor has to be protected. But how we'll create that carve out also, I think we need to figure out. But because there could be technical reasons, you have to withdraw the process.
Okay, if you have gone through the discussion paper and also the draft regulation, it actually envisages two situations. Number one, they say the process has not been initiated. Process has not been initiated. The process of sale, then of course it is a special resolution and 2/3 of the creditors. But where the process has been initiated of sale, then they say all unpaid creditors. They are not saying 100%. Obviously, those who have been paid, they will not have any say. But then they say it should be 100% of the unpaid creditors. Are you supporting the view that here also again we should be 75% of the unpaid creditors?
Yeah, I'm on one further point also, where I am saying whether these triggers which have been created for the sale, whether these triggers are good enough or there should be some other trigger, because by doing the sale, what I have achieved, I have only liquidated. Money is still with the company. Distribution has not happened. Should this not be deferred to the stage of distribution, or should it remain at as proposed at the stage of sale, means liquidation of the asset? That is another discussion point. We can debate and I agree, but what is proposed, I'm just bringing a point which can create tomorrow some problem. I fairly agree and understand what point you have mentioned. I'm okay with this point, but we need to debate only to the extent that where maybe at whatever stage, maybe the assets are sold and maybe the distribution has even happened. Even in those cases also, just because of some technical reasons, if I have to withdraw the process, I should not be holded back just because of one of the creditors.
Okay, your point is well taken, but can you just elaborate on you have mentioned technical reasons number of times. So can you just elaborate on what could be a technical reason?
Yeah, I could say that maybe let's say there is a solvency issue, right? Because solvency is one on basis which the process starts. Let's say your company was, maybe the directors have given that company is solvent. Unfortunately, when the creditor's claim came, those claims were more than what the value you could realize. And you have to ultimately, you have left with no choices. You have to, I think, go back to the status from where you started.
Okay, so you are actually coming out of a situation because valuation of the asset is done, but you are trying to say that when I come out with an actual sale, my sale can be less than the valuation also, but then my claims can.
Yes.
So the company was not solvent. But you see, if the company was not solvent and the assets recovery is less than this thing, then it could be a case of, you see, it will bank upon that it was done to defraud the creditor. Then of course, because the directors, majority of the directors who have given an affidavit, they will be in trouble, isn't it? So that is a separate situation altogether. I will not call it as a technical situation.
It may not be a fraud, Ashish ji. It may be otherwise, because say, claims were more, where the valuation was undervalued, I can understand. But where the claims are more, how you would treat that situation? Maybe we were having the balance sheet of, let's say, 1 crore outstanding. But when the claims came, they were slightly more than 1 crore. Maybe we have written off some debt and the claims have came forward. So,
okay. So you are saying that once the claim come and the claims are more than the assets valuation, so at that stage it should be a technical thing and the process should be withdrawn straight away. That is what you are trying to say.
Yes, that should not be halted. Correct.
Okay. Well, in that case, you see, the process of sale has not begun to that extent. So I think that is already covered under clause number sub-regulation 1 of 4A, because it says when the process of sale has not been initiated. So the withdrawal is possible when you pass special resolution and 75% of the creditor. So I think 75% there is no quarrel, because it was approved by 75%, withdrawal should also be approved. but only where the sale process has begun, the IBBI is recommending that it should be 100% of the unpaid creditors. So that is what the checks and balances. Yes, Mr. Rajkamal. Yeah.
I have got a one limited point. As far as the 100% creditors are concerned, when some assets has been liquidated, I fully agree. But in that case, if there is just some dissenting creditors, in that case, the special provision should be there that they should be paid. Then after the withdrawal can be allowed. So that way they can be their interest can be taken care.
Okay, so you are
Yes, it is there.
You are considering a situation that where 75% agree and then say 25% don't agree. That means they are considered as dissenting creditor, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the withdrawal should be permitted when they are paid fully. That is what you are trying to bring that point.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Yes,
that is implied, and that is always there.
So in that case, there is no issue.
Okay, but Mr. Subramaniam, when I went through the discussion paper doesn't talk about the dissenting creditors. Mr. Rajkamal has brought a very interesting point that if say 24% of the, supposing the resolution is passed by 80% of the creditors, 20%.
Suppose if any dissenting creditor has been paid, suppose all dissenting creditors, suppose remaining 25% creditors, they don't agree, if their dues are paid, it becomes 100% automatically. Suppose, 2 or 3 creditors, whoever is objecting, suppose 2% of the creditors, they are agreeing. If those debts are paid, their dues are paid, then it becomes 100%. If 10% of the creditors, they disagree, if their dues are paid, it becomes 100%. Like that, I want to say.
No, that is all right, sir. But here the point is little different. That supposing 75% of the creditors have to agree for withdrawal. Now, once you started the process, and there could be a brute majority of 3/4 of creditors, but then there are certain creditors who are not paid also, but they are dissenting. They are not agreeing to withdrawal. So, should there be a provision to make payment of the dissenting creditors at this stage also?
No. See, if their dues are paid, they will not become creditors. No? Once their dues are paid, they will not come in the picture of creditors.
No, sir. I think I've not been able to make it clear to you. Let me make it clear. They are not paid right now. You are understanding that they have been paid. They are not paid now. Nobody is paid. But the decision, special resolution is passed to withdraw, and they go back to the creditors. 75% of the creditors also say, okay, we agree to the withdrawal. The 25% do not agree. Now they are actually categorized as dissenting creditors because they have voted against. Now, should they be given some protection at this stage itself? Because then those people should be paid in priority, because even in merger, if you look at the merger provisions also, those people who are not agreeing to the merger, they are called as dissenting, and there is some provision even in Companies Act that their interest should be protected. I think that's a very good point which was raised by Mr. Rajkamal, that even they consider as dissenting, should there be any protection on that? So I think, sir, this point should be considered by IBBI. Yes, sir. Anyone? I think there is background noise. Can you mute? Somebody has logged in with the name MSPPC. Can we mute them? Yes, thank you. Yes, Milinji.
Sir, this is a typical situation where the company is a solvent company. First thing, the solvent company which is going for voluntary liquidation, voluntarily they are going for liquidation. So their checks are there with shareholder special resolution, creditors 2/3 resolution. And the situation which we are envisaging, that some creditors are paid in between. I think this is a remote possibility, because when we are going for a final payment distribution, till that time, all dues are required to be paid to the government authorities. All laws are applicable. So no liquidator will take a chance to pay the creditors till the last money is coming to its kitty. If there is
no, sir. There is also a provision which says that any money which is realized has to be distributed within 6 months. So there is a provision of interim dividend and final dividend. So I will not say that unless the entire money has come, no money will be paid. So that is not envisaged under the law. it is possible that there could be first interim dividend, second interim dividend, and then whatever money is left out, that's as a final dividend.
But then in that case, it cannot be to us only one category of people. It will go to the proportionately to all people. In that
that is all right, but it will go into priority. Now, see, first the secured creditor. So secured creditor, supposing they have been paid 50% of their dues, but other creditors and they have not been paid. So I think we'll have to look at their opinion also in that case. So that is why the checks and balances are there, that at least 100% of the unpaid creditors should approve it, so that there is no dissenting creditor. I think Mr. Rajkamal has
even that checks and balances can be there. That is not an issue. Checks and balances can be there. But going with to some authority or something like that for that matter is
Milinji, we have understood your point. I think you are a great votary of not going to adjudicating authority for whatever experience you may have. Well, we respect your opinion. Yes, sir. Yes, Amit ji, you wanted to say something.
Just a small point to what Milinji was mentioning. There is no requirement of even maintaining the priority order in case of voluntary liquidation, because your company essence is solvent. So you are going to pay each and every creditor 100%. So there is nothing like, to best of my understanding, law nowhere says that you have to pay it in proportionate or you have to pay it in priority in that order. It can go other way.
No, sir. I think let's be very clear. Section 53 is also applicable for voluntary liquidation. Supposing you have sold one land and building, so you have got 10 crore rupees. So now you have not sold everything because you are going to interimly distribute it. So interim distribution will be done in order of priority. So section 53 comes into place, sir. I don't think we can avoid section 53 even in voluntary liquidation. Of course, 100%, you are absolutely right that 100% have to be paid because it's a solvent company. I agree with you. At the end of the day, everyone will be paid. But the priority is still there in interim and final. Okay. Yes. Anyone else would like to contribute on this particular aspect? And the other two aspects which I mentioned about avoidance transaction and the fees of the liquidator. Can we have some comments on that also? Let's talk about fees of the liquidator. I think fees becomes a lot of smiles on the faces of the liquidators, isn't it? So don't you want that your fee should also be protected? There should be some provision in the regulation which should protect the fee of the liquidator, right? So either there are two things: whether the fees should be paid in full, whether the liquidator has done something or not, has gone through the entire process, and if not, then what should be the criteria of payment of the fees? Now, Mr. Madhusudan Sharma has appeared because he always protects the IPs and the liquidator. Yes, sir. Let's hear from you.
This has to be a balanced view in the sense it is not justifiable to pay the full fee for the period of voluntary liquidation. So depending on what stage the liquidation is, because IP is a professional, he is not a businessman, that he will invest something then wait for. So IP should be paid for the time which has been put in till the voluntary liquidation is withdrawn, based on whatever the effect of that was there.
Okay. Okay, Amiji, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, just to supplement what Madhusudanji was mentioning, a small point only. I believe IBBI has always been keeping themselves away from the settlement of the fees of a liquidator or the insolvency professional or whosoever it may be. So here also it is unlikely that they will come in between and they will say what best we can do. What we are already doing, I think perhaps few of us are already doing, that while we execute the letter of engagement for undertaking the voluntary liquidation, there is always a provision. Maybe many may not be doing because of the situation that maybe we are not required to close the process at any point of time, but sooner it will start. Once the provision will be there, we will start that if at all we have to stop the process, this will be the term and this will be the amount that will be paid. So that is how it has been decided, I believe.
Okay, so you are saying that let us not leave it to the regulator. Let us decide ourselves in future while drafting the engagement letter. We should always contain a caveat that if it is closes down earlier than you see the complete process, then this will be the fees. But then again, how will you anticipate at what stage? Because what Mr. Madhusudan I understood from his is that the stage is more important. Like supposing if it is closed, say 1 month after the decision and nothing has happened, what should be the fees? Then supposing you have already undergone 50% of the process, if that is withdrawn at that stage, then what should be the fees? I think the stage is very important. Letter of engagement cannot anticipate each and every stage. Yeah.
No, what I am saying ki it is a mutual understanding between the corporate debtor and the liquidator that decides what fees you are charging. You may be charging 4 lakh rupees, you may be charging 40 lakh rupees. So depending on that, you will decide ki if I am leaving the process at stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, I will be charging this much minimum fees and this will be the formula. So otherwise how it will be, I don't find out any other way that IBBI will be coming out with this.
Okay. No, Amitji, I think we are not talking about that IBBI should step in and decide the fees. What we are saying is, it should have a provision for protection of the payment of the fees. That's what we are only saying. Supposing the regulation can simply say that withdrawal will be possible if the fee of the liquidator is also paid. And now what is that fee? We are leaving it to the negotiation or to the wisdom of adjudicating authority. That's a separate issue altogether. But at least that protection can be inbuilt in the regulations. Are you of that opinion, or you are still of the opinion that even that provision should also not be there?
That much protection is always great and respect your views. So
okay.
No second thought on that.
Okay, very good. I think Milinji again, you see, wants to say something. Yes, sir. Commercial wisdoms, yes, sir. Let's hear from you.
See, commercially, the IP is full fees to be paid. Because you are having some advantage, that's why you are going back for the revival. So
Achha, sir, one more aspect. No, that is obviously, sir, very, you can say objectively, you are saying that 100% fees should be paid, but that may not be possible because you see, there is a principle of equity which should apply, isn't it? So equitable treatment is to be there.
It is like that. You have agreed contractual agreement with me for paying the fees. Now you are closing the process itself and going for revival with some benefits. So I am also becoming a creditor now in your list that way. Why you are debating on my fees?
Okay, one more aspect which I can add here is that you are saying that 100% fees I become a creditor, but I will become a creditor when I render services, right? To that fullest extent. Number 2, sometimes the fees of the liquidator is also dependent on the sale of the assets, isn't it? Many times, rather, if we look at the table which is given in liquidation provision, it is also talking about realization as well as the distribution. So if nothing has happened, then the company will say you are not entitled for any fees, 0 fees. So therefore, you are not a creditor today.
Sir, that table is not applicable to voluntary liquidation.
I'm not saying, so understand, you may not mistake me. I'm saying that even in liquidation, voluntary liquidation, supposing that table is adopted or some formula on basis on the realization is adopted by some liquidator. Now, no asset is sold, then the corporate will take a stand. You have not done any.
Sir, that is the fee which I have agreed.
That is what I'm saying. Agreed means.
Then I cannot go back and say that I should be paid more.
No,
if I have agreed for realization, then if I'm not getting anything, I should agree for that thing. Because that is again a commercial thing.
So that means whether realization takes place or not, whether distribution takes place or not, I should get my fees. That's what you are saying.
Naturally, because see, it is not my decision to withdraw. You are withdrawing it for your benefit. You should pay me. Otherwise, I will continue and give me the fees. What is the problem?
Okay. So all IPs will definitely, it will be an ear to their music, actually music to their ears now. So that what you are saying. Okay. Anyone else wants to contribute? I think then we can, yes, Geeta ma'am and Rajkamal ji. Yes, one by one.
Sir, actually, if you really look at the situation around us, whether as an IP or a liquidator, the payment is always a trouble. So even with all the tables and prescribed fees itself, we are all struggling to get our money. So if nothing is there, and then it's going to be a real challenge, as to who will determine how we will be paid. Because anyways, we are going to spend time on the project. It is not that we will not spend time. See, withdrawal is only, as Mr. Milinthi said, it is their decision. But then we have worked on the project. So there should be some formula that has to be put in place so that, the liquidator would get some money for that amount of time that he spent on the project.
Okay, so within the code cycle.
Yeah.
I think, friends, can you mute yourself, because there are a lot of background noises which are coming. Okay, so I think what we are coming to is that, of course, the fees has to be paid. There is no quarrel. And whatever services have been rendered, they have to be paid. So what our suggestion to IBPI is that for payment of fees to the liquidator, it should also be brought in the regulation itself, so that there is a legal protection to the fees. Of course, as far as the quantum of the fees is concerned, we are not bringing IBPI into it, but adjudicating authority. So here also there is another case that why should we go back to adjudicating authority? Because adjudicating authority will also look into this factor before allowing withdrawal, that whether you have paid the fees of the liquidator or not. I think this is one of the proper checks and balances where the protection to the liquidator will also happen. And I will say within the courts, it should be reasonable. I mean, I won't say that 100%. So I will not go with that kind of an opinion. Yes. I think, okay.
We have Dipti Mehta, ma'am.
Dipti ma'am, yes.
Yeah, hello. Just sorry, I will be little different view, not connected to fees. My view was that the voluntary liquidation is for the financially sound company. So if it is financially sound, why 3/4 creditor, 3/4 majority? According to me, all creditors should be equally treated and it should be paid properly. And if it is financially sound, then only voluntary liquidation. Even a balance, even 1 or 2 liquidator, what is the value? That kind of company which can pay all creditors should be allowed to be voluntary liquidation. That is my view, actually.
So what you are saying is that even if the company wants to withdraw that decision of voluntary liquidation, still the 100% payment to the creditors must be made. That's what you are saying?
Yeah, for withdrawal, not 3/4 majority, because
okay,
here the company.
Okay, but at the time of taking decision to voluntarily liquidate, it was 3/4 of the majority. But you are saying withdrawal should be 100% approval should be there. That's what
yeah, here actually even for initiation, I am of the opinion full.
Okay.
On that, there is no comment, so I'm not commenting. But actually, the company is financially sound. It can pay all creditors. Only reason is not the financial trouble or any issue, but some business problem or purpose achieved, whatever, that 1, 2, 3, 4. That's why it's going into liquidation. In that case scenario, all creditors should be paid. And that should be 100%. The situation, again, sorry, only 1 minute. Situation can be that creditors cannot be contacted, or that situation also can arise where you are not practically able to get that. That amount should be deposited in the fund, and then it is allowed to carry out voluntary liquidation. The same way when withdrawal, same thing should happen.
Okay, another aspect which is coming, because you said that some creditors may not be contactable. Well, there could be a possibility. Then should it be a meeting of the creditors, or it should be taken as like NOC? Supposing I have to obtain no objection certificates, but I'm not able to contact 2 creditors, then I will not be able to withdraw just because I'm not able to contact them.
Yeah, option is there, either NOC or meeting, option is there. But the is obtained, and if not reachable, then it is.
And then another aspect is, supposing I call a meeting and out of 100 creditors, only 50 attend. So it should be present and voting, or all creditors, and they should be given electronic voting like you see we have in CRP process.
Exactly, I mentioned that depending on that, option should be left to the corporate debtor. Depending on the size and the nature of creditor, location, they can take a call.
Okay. Your point is well taken. So, friends, I think these are interesting issues, and different opinions have also come in. This will definitely benefit IBBI because we present our views in a proper perspective. They will test it from the legal possibility and also the ground reality. That is very important because we are the people who are actually conducting it on the ground. So whatever difficulties which we are facing, I think that needs to be looked into. The last aspect which I would like to throw some light is, like, supposing the liquidator has come across some avoidance transaction, because in any case he has to deal with those situations also. So what will be the fate of the avoidance transactions in this case? So any opinions on this? In that case, should it be allowed, or should it, because you see there could be a possibility. Look at this situation. Today, when I come into voluntary liquidation, I am giving an affidavit that I am 100% solvent and I'll pay 100% to the creditors. After 4 months, I withdraw it and nothing has happened, so withdrawal is allowed. But after withdrawal, in the next 2 months, I start my CIRP process because now I have defaulted to someone. Now the creditors will get a haircut. Earlier in the liquidation process, they were actually getting 100%. But within 6 months or maybe 8 months down the line, well, there is a situation. So I think IBBI should also look into this, that if the company comes into CIRP process within 12 months from the decision to withdraw, then the creditors must be protected. I think that should be one of the provisions which should be looked into, because otherwise it could be a case of fraud also, isn't it? So I think those situations we have to really anticipate. The legal situations also can arise on this aspect. So friends, before we conclude, any other member who would like to contribute and say something on these two aspects? Otherwise, I think we had a wonderful discussion and members have contributed a lot. We are very thankful for their active participation. But anyone who wants to speak, so I think, yes, Rajkamalji. Yeah.
Regarding avoidance transaction, and in the situation where it is proved that the purpose was with the defraud the creditor, number one. Number two, the company is not the solvent. In place of getting the withdrawal, it should be straightway converted to the CRP process by the adjudicating order. so that the issue of defrauding the creditor will answer there itself. Because if the company is not solvent in any way, it is going to be not to be paid to the creditor. So it has to be, so that should be some this type of check and balances.
Rather than going back into the CIRP, I would say that the persons who have given an affidavit that they are solvent, they should be made personally liable to pay. I think that should be there. Yeah.
That should be additionally. But CRP process, because in that case, the company operation is not being run in a prudent manner. So it's the CRP process should be there. So that is what my view is.
Yeah, I think your point is well taken, sir. I think very quick comments because now we have to close, sir.
One thing, avoidance transactions which come up during the process of voluntary liquidation. In this regard, one Delhi High Court, I think High Court judgment is just passed. Once it is main proceedings get closed, then you cannot make IA to run around. It means for 66 and all these applications should die. Now, if this view will persist, then it will become with voluntary liquidation also. So that would be taken care of by IBBI to come up something clarification, notification kind of thing, that it should be done separately. At the separate.
Okay, Vishalji, the aspect is little different. We are not talking about that. You are probably referring to Venus Rectifiers, Venus Recruiters Private Limited judgment. That is, of course, on a particular issue of law, which can also be debated. We will definitely, I think we can have a discussion on that. But you see, the point is not like that. Nobody is pursuing this. What I'm saying is that supposing avoidance transactions have come to the light, right, that there were some preference transactions, some extortionate transactions, some maybe to defraud creditors like under 66 sections which are there. So if they come to the notice of the liquidator, say within the 3 months process which he was there, now should the withdrawal should be allowed at this stage also or not? That was the question. The question is not, we are not going into the legal debate whether liquidator can continue after the closure of the liquidation, or that aspect, we are not discussing on that particular aspect. So this is an important thing which needs to be looked into. Yes, any final comments from someone?
Just a small point, Ashish ji. I just wanted to bring the point that you are saying that due to avoidance transaction, perhaps you are referring that due to avoidance transaction, company is becoming insolvent instead of solvent. If that is the case, what you are saying, I think that makes sense. But what about the cases where there is an avoidance transaction, company remains still solvent?
No, that's what I'm saying. No, that's what I'm saying. You see, avoidance transaction are something that look, you see, not only some more money has to come into the coffers of the company, but like avoidance transaction means the contribution has to come back to the company. But supposing there is a provision of section 66 also, wrongful doing and other things. Despite the fact that the company is solvent, but there are certain transactions which have come to the notice of the liquidator, which are to defraud the creditors. So should the liquidation be closed? Obviously, there is a provision that in case there is a defraud to creditors, so I think that will fall into that line itself. So
my point is that we should not complicate the whole process. Now, just to take care of the interest of some of the situations, I fully agree that there has to be protection. So 448 is there in the Companies Act, and in IBC also is a sufficient protection. We should not emphasize that what you are trying to highlight unless the situation shifts from solvency to insolvency.
Okay, that point is taken, that as far as the commercial this is concerned. But supposing the company has committed some criminal activities which come to the light of the liquidator while liquidating, I think he has got his duty to bring it to the notice of the adjudicating authority. So we are coming back to the thing that there should be justified reasons for doing it, this thing. And liquidator should also have a say and should bring it to the reasons and the factual position before the adjudicating authority, before a call is taken whether that withdrawal should be allowed or not. So friends, I think we have a very interesting and a fantastic discussion. And I must thank on behalf of ICSI IIP for everyone for contributing in such a manner. It was a wonderful discussion. So thank you so much. Now we can close that discussion now. So over to you, Nitin, for your closing remarks.
Thank you very much, sir. So with this, we have come to
important discussion. We thank all the participants for their patience and valuable inputs. And a special thanks to Ashish Mukhija for steering the discussion in a very threadbare and balanced manner. Sir has allowed everyone to put input for their points, and he has taken on board and he has rather addressed them all and given his input also. So we also thank the IBB officials. We acknowledge their gracious presence and for the indulgence and participation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.